big band hits such as Sing, 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 Stompin' at the Savoy, and the Mozart Clarinet Concerto. It's true. Benny Goodman loved jazz, but he was also a big fan of classical music. In fact, it was said of Benny Goodman that he liked any kind of music as long as it's good music. Well, I can't claim to have the same kind of talent that Benny had, but I like to think that that applies to me as well. I like to think that you could say about me that I like any kind of music as long as it's good music. Music has certainly had quite an influence on me over my life, and I just wanted to tell you about a few ways. It starts when I was just a very young child. Some of my earliest memories revolve around music. For example, I remember sitting in my piano teacher's apartment. He had, in his tiny apartment, he had the biggest piano I had ever seen in my entire life. Now, you have to remember, I was about this high at the time, okay? But it was a large piano. And I remember sitting on that piano bench with him, learning to play. I also remember sitting on the piano bench with my mom. My mom is a pianist as well. She's really good, at least she's better than me. And she would play just these impossibly hard pieces of music. And I listen to them and I think, man, that's really cool. I'd love to be able to play like that someday. Well, when I got a little bit older, music again, but a different kind of music, I decided I was going to join the school band. So, like Benny Goodman, I started playing the clarinet. I remember so many things from high school band, but one of the ones that I remember the most clearly was when I was in marching band. And I remember standing out there in the marching band, and some of you all who've been in marching band, you remember this. You stand out there in the sweltering August heat with your instrument, perfectly still, and then you have to learn to take steps exactly 22.5 inches long, right? Well, about that same time, as I said, I like any kind of music as long as it's good music. Very good. I decided, for whatever reason, I wanted to learn to play the bass guitar. So some of you that are about my age, Chip, I don't know about any of the rest of you, but people who are about my age, you may remember a band from the 70s called Styx. And one of my favorite Styx tunes was Blue Collar Man. And I remember sitting in my parents' house with that rented bass guitar, working on for hours and hours that lick from Blue Collar Man. Do 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 do. Many, many, many times. Well, as I grew older, and maybe a little bit more mature, I hope, I found that music actually helped in a number of other ways. It helped me to be an influence in people's lives. A friend of mine found out that I played the bass, and he said, you know, I have a bluegrass band, and we need a bass player. Would you like to join us? And the first thing I said is, well, I like any kind of music as long as it's good music. And so I said, sure. And the second thing I thought was, I don't know the first thing about bluegrass music. So I went down to the library and checked out every bluegrass CD I could find and listened to it over and over again for a couple of weeks. And what I found was, bluegrass is really cool. It's good music. I really enjoyed it. So from that, I also learned something that was surprising, which is I could make people happy by playing music. From that, I started playing bluegrass over at a retirement home in Leesburg. And what was so cool is I'd start playing these old hymns. You know, I love these old hymns, you know, the Old Rugged Cross and Amazing Grace and Jesus Paid It All, just all these hymns. And I'd play these hymns, and I'd look out at people out in the audience, and then not only were they smiling and tapping their feet, but there were some of them who were singing along, some of them who were not quite all there mentally. Something about those songs made a connection with their childhood, even though they hadn't been to church in 50, 60, 70, 80 years for some of them. But they remembered these old songs, and they would sing them with me. Well, it's not just people outside my family. It's also in my family that music has had a big influence. I think about some of the earliest memories with my wife, was sitting on her apartment living room floor and listening to such great bands as Boy George and Culture Club, icons of the 80s. And my kids, too. My daughter's turned out to be really a pretty good pianist. And she plays with me at the retirement home. We'll play together. She'll play the piano, I'll play the guitar and sing. And my son, we've had just so many times that music has really enriched our lives. Music of all kinds. Just 2 weekends ago, we went camping and we went sailing. But what we did in the evenings is we went to the campfire and we played and sang music. So it was just very special sitting there with my son, playing and singing music, me on the guitar and singing, and him playing the mandolin just into the middle of the night, playing all these old songs. Just a great blessing. Well, probably the simplest thing, though, music has done is it brings us a great deal of pleasure. It certainly brings me a great deal of pleasure. I mean, I think about almost every evening in the summer, I'll go out to our deck behind our house, and I'll turn on some jazz or some classical or any kind of music, as long as it's good music. And I'll listen to it, and I'll read, and just enjoy the outdoors. It's very calming. I mean, if you have a fairly stressful job, you may want to try it. And finally, whenever I travel, I always try to visit local music venues. You know, whether it's Christian coffee house, or blues, or jazz, or whatever. Just visit and just see any kind of music. So, what about you? Do you like to listen to all different kinds of music? I bet that when you were a kid, you did. So I want to challenge you to recapture that, to go out there and experience some new kind of music, something maybe you haven't listened to in years. You know, whether it's bluegrass, or hip-hop, or country, or whatever. It really doesn't matter. Go out there. Try some new kind of music, any kind, as long as it's good music. Thank you.